The sun had teeth that morning. It cut through the canyons of Harlem like a blade, flashing off barbershop mirrors, church windows, and the windshields of cars that didn't belong. The kind of light that made everything look too honest, too exposed. Bumpy Johnson noticed it the moment he stepped out onto Lenox Avenue, the brim of his fedora catching the glare. He paused at the curb, not because he hesitated, but because he listened. Harlem always talked. Not with words. Harlem talked with timing, the way a shoeshine boy stopped brushing, the way a woman on the corner suddenly remembered she left her stove on, the way men, who usually argued over pennies, went quiet when a certain kind of car rolled past. A neighborhood had lungs. You could hear it inhale when danger arrived. Today the street inhaled. Bumpy didn't change his expression. He didn't glance around like a nervous man. He didn't do the thing outsiders expected. Search the rooftops, check the alleyways, clutch his coat like he had something to protect. He simply adjusted his cufflink and started walking, measured, toward the storefront on 35th, where he was due to meet one of Madame St. Clair's runners. People watched him like they always did, half admiration, half fear. He gave none of it back. If you looked closely, you could see the discipline in how he moved. Shoulders loose, steps even, no wasted motion. A man who had learned that panic was a luxury. A block behind him, a black Packard, eased from the curb and merged into traffic like it had always been there. Inside the Packard, Salvatore Salvatali sat in the back seat, hat low, cigarette unlit, between his fingers. He didn't smoke before jobs. He liked his hands steady. Across from him, Eddie Buttons Mancuso kept glancing at the street through the side window, the way a dog watches a yard. It doesn't trust. Up front, the driver, Frankie Narducci, spoke without turning his head. Broad daylight, Frankie muttered. That's what they want? Sal didn't answer right away. He watched Bumpy's back as if he were studying a problem. That's what Mr. Luciano wants, he said finally. That's what Mr. Genovese agreed to. Loud and clean. Buttons snorted. Clean? In Harlem? In the middle of a Tuesday? Clean for them, Sal corrected. Not for us. Buttons rolled his eyes. Why are we even doing this? Since when do we take out a man who's making everybody money? Sal's gaze sharpened. Since a man starts believing he's bigger than the deal. The deal. The word hung in the car like smoke. Everyone in their world lived under deals. Spoken, unspoken, written in ink or blood. Harlem had always been a complication. Neighborhood you didn't own the way you owned a dock or a garment union. Harlem belonged to itself, but Harlem also produced rivers of money, and money made men reckless. Bumpy Johnson was the kind of reckless that looked like calm. Luciano thinks Bumpy's getting too proud, Frankie said, thinking he can make his own rules. Sal's mouth tightened, almost a smile. He can. That's the problem. Buttons leaned forward. So we pop him and walk away. Sal looked at him like he was a child. No. We pop him and we leave a message. Because if the message isn't bigger than the man, the next man won't hear it. He finally lit his cigarette. The flame briefly illuminated his knuckles. Hard, scarred, the hands of someone who didn't ask permission. We do it where Harlem sees, where Harlem remembers. Buttons swallowed. And you think Harlem won't come looking for us? Sal exhaled slowly. Harlem always comes looking. Ahead, Bumpy crossed 34th. He didn't look back, but he drifted closer to the curb, subtle, like a man making room for a passing stranger. The move seemed casual. It wasn't. On the opposite side of the street, a newspaper vendor shifted his stack without selling a paper. A shoeshine boy stood up from his crate, even though no one had called for him. Two women in bright dresses stopped mid-laugh and separated, creating space, like a door opening. Bumpy saw all of it. He didn't flinch. He didn't hurry. He simply changed the geometry of the street, inch by inch, until it belonged to him. A second car appeared at the next intersection. A dull gray Buick that didn't match the neighborhood, moving too smoothly, too quiet. It pulled up near the curb, as if it were looking for parking. Sal narrowed his eyes. That's not ours. Buttons leaned toward the glass. Who the hell is that? Frankie's jaw flexed. Maybe they sent another team. Sal's cigarette stopped, halfway to his lips. No, Mr. Luciano doesn't send two teams. That's sloppy. The Buick's driver didn't get out. The passenger didn't get out. They just sat there, like spiders waiting for a fly to step into the web. Sal felt something cold crawl up his spine. He hated unknown variables. Unknown variables got you buried. Slow down, Sal told Frankie. Frankie eased off the gas. Bumpy approached the intersection where the Buick waited. A man stepped out of a doorway, just ahead of him. Tall, clean suit, too broad across the shoulders for the neighborhood. He carried a rolled-up poster under one arm, like a worker heading to paste it on a wall. Bumpy's pace didn't change, but his eyes flicked once to the poster. Too thick, too stiff, something inside it. The man with the poster moved across directly in Bumpy's path. Sal sat forward. That's the hitter, he said quietly. That's not how we planned it. Button's voice was small. That ain't even our guy. The man reached the center of the sidewalk, turning slightly. The poster unrolled, just enough to reveal what it truly was. Not paper, but canvas wrapped around a long shape. A gun. A machine gun. Disguised. Cradled like a secret. Sal's heart thudded once. Hard. Not fear, recognition. Someone had decided not to kill Bumpy Johnson like a man. Someone wanted to erase him like a crowd. The hitter's hands moved fast now. Canvas peeling away. Metal flashing in the sun. People on the street froze in that instant. When the world chooses a direction, Bumpy did not freeze. He did not widen his eyes. He did not recoil. He did not do the human thing. He stepped forward, not back, not sideways, forward, into the threat, as if he were closing the distance to shake the man's hand. The hitter's mouth opened, surprised by the audacity of it. That surprise cost him time, and time in Harlem belonged to Bumpy. Bumpy's left hand shot out, not to grab the gun, but to push the barrel upward. The weapon jerked toward the sky just as it began to cough fire. A burst of bullets chewed into a street lamp instead of Bumpy's chest. Sparks rained down like angry fireworks. People screamed and scattered. Bumpy stayed in place. His right hand came up holding something small. So small, most eyes missed it. A short, heavy object that caught the sunlight like a coin. Brass knuckles. He drove the brass into the hitter's wrist. Bone cracked. The gun sagged. Bumpy hit again, harder, into the man's throat. The hitter choked. Eyes bulging. Machine gun dangling, uselessly as the canvas fell completely away. Another burst went off, wild. Panicked, spitting bullets into a storefront sign. Glass exploded. A woman cried out as shards rained down. Bumpy didn't look at her. He didn't have to. He had already heard the sound of the Buick door opening. Sal saw it too. Two men stepping out, one with a handgun already raised. Their faces were blank, professional, the look of men who had done this before and expected it to be simple. Sal felt fury bloom in his chest. Somebody was moving on their job. Somebody was trying to frame them, maybe, or start a war, or simply make sure Bumpy died no matter whose hands did it. And Bumpy stood there in the middle of it, hat still on, tie still straight, eyes calm like dark water. He pivoted, smooth, using the hitter's body as a shield. The man's machine gun clattered against the sidewalk. The Buick gunman fired. The first shot punched into the hitter's shoulder instead of Bumpy. The second shot hit the metal street lamp and ricocheted, whining into the air. Bumpy didn't flinch. He used the moment, just a sliver, to look across the street. His eyes met Sal Vitale's. Through the Packard's windshield. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't panic. It was recognition. Like he'd known the Packard was there all along. Like he'd been waiting to see who blinked first. Sale's cigarette dropped from his fingers and burned a hole in the seat. He didn't feel it, because in that instant, Sal understood something that made his stomach go hollow. This wasn't just an attempt on Bumpy Johnson. This was a setup. And whoever set it in motion wasn't afraid of Harlem, wasn't afraid of the mafia, and wasn't afraid of the blood that would follow. Bumpy's mouth moved, barely, and Sal read the words without hearing them. Not you. Then Bumpy moved again, fast, controlled, dragging the wounded hitter down and stepping over him like a man stepping over a puddle, advancing straight toward the Buick gunmen as bullets cracked in the daylight. And still, he didn't flinch. The street had turned into noise, not the kind you hear, but the kind you feel: shattered glass underfoot, shoes scraping pavement, 100 people running in different directions, with the same fear pushing them forward. The Buick's gunmen realized too late that they'd lost control of the moment. Daylight was supposed to make this clean. Instead, it made witnesses. Bumpy Johnson walked straight at them. Not fast, not slow, measured. Each step deliberate, like he was crossing a room he owned. One of the gunmen hesitated. That hesitation was fatal. Bumpy snatched a fallen newspaper stand with his left hand and hurled it sideways. Metal slammed into the man's chest, knocking the breath out of him and sending his gun skittering across the pavement. The second gunman fired, wild and panicked. A bullet tore through Bumpy's coat sleeve, grazing skin. Blood blossomed, dark and immediate. Bumpy didn't even look at it. He closed the distance, grabbed the man by the collar, and drove his head into the Buick's open door with a sound like a bat cracking wood. The gunman collapsed, unconscious before he hit the ground. Sirens wailed in the distance now. Too soon, too close. Harlem had moved faster than anyone planned. Bumpy turned, scanning. The original hitter lay on the sidewalk, wheezing, blood pooling beneath him. Alive, but finished. The street lamps were pocked with bullet holes. Storefronts shattered. A piece of canvas fluttered in the gutter like a white flag. Across the street, the Packard idled. Sal Vitale was out of the car before Frankie could stop him. Jesus Christ, Buttons muttered, watching Sal step into the open, exposed like a man who had forgotten what side of the street he belonged on. Bumpy saw Sal approach. His eyes were calm, assessing, taking inventory. He reached into his pocket, not for a weapon, but for a handkerchief. He pressed it to his bleeding arm with casual pressure. "You boys lose something?" Bumpy asked. Sal stopped a few feet away. Up close, Bumpy looked smaller than legend, leaner, but denser, like a wire pulled tight. "This wasn't us," Sal said quickly. "Not like this." Bumpy studied him for a long moment. Sirens grew louder. "I know," Bumpy said. "That's why you're still standing." Sal swallowed. "Someone wanted it messy. Someone wanted a war," Bumpy corrected. "Wars start when nobody knows who fired first." A police cruiser screeched to a halt at the corner. Officers spilled out, guns raised, eyes darting between bodies and faces. They recognized Bumpy instantly. So did everyone else. One cop lowered his weapon first, then another. Bumpy turned slightly, giving them his good side. "Gentlemen," he said calmly, "I was attacked." The officers looked at the unconscious gunmen, the dropped weapons, the dozen witnesses nodding already. One officer sighed, like a man being handed a familiar problem. "Ambulance is on the way," he said. "You need a doctor?" Bumpy shook his head. "Just a tailor." The cop almost smiled as medics rushed in. Bumpy leaned closer to Sal, his voice dropping. "Tell your bosses something for me." Sal nodded. "Anything. Tell them daylight didn't save them," Bumpy said. "And next time, they should send someone who doesn't miss." Sal felt the weight of it settle in his chest. This wasn't over. It wasn't even close. Bumpy stepped back, as if dismissing him. The police closed in, forming a loose circle, not to arrest, but to contain. Sal returned to the Packard on unsteady legs. Frankie started the engine. Buttons stared straight ahead. Behind them, in the middle of Lenox Avenue, Bumpy Johnson stood in the open sun, blood on his sleeve, witnesses everywhere, alive, unshaken. And now everyone from Harlem to Little Italy knew the same thing. They had tried to kill him in broad daylight, and he hadn't flinched. Night came down on Harlem slow and heavy, like it was thinking about what it had seen. The attempt in daylight had failed, but daylight had done its work anyway. By sunset, every back room, from Lenox to Little Italy, knew the same truth. Bumpy Johnson was still breathing, and somebody had broken the rules trying to change that. Men who never prayed crossed themselves. Men who never doubted began. Bumpy sat alone in Madame St. Clair's office, jacket folded on the chair beside him, fresh bandage wrapped clean and tight around his arm. The room smelled of paper, ink, and expensive perfume. Numbers ledgers lay stacked neatly untouched. Power liked order. He replayed the morning in his mind, not with anger, not with pride, but with precision. Who moved first? Who hesitated? Who fired without thinking? The Buick, the Packard, the extra man, the sloppiness. Someone had rushed this. Someone had panicked. That was the crack. A knock came at the door. 2 short taps, 1 long. Bumpy didn't turn. "Come in." Sal Vitale stepped inside, hat in his hands like a confession. He looked smaller at night, stripped of the Packard and the authority it carried. Just a man now. "I came alone," Sal said. "I know," Bumpy replied. "If you hadn't, you wouldn't be here." Sal nodded. "Luciano didn't order the hit. Neither did Genovese." Bumpy finally looked at him. "Then who did?" Sal hesitated. That told Bumpy everything. Fear always named the truth before the mouth did. "A faction," Sal said carefully. "Men who think Harlem is getting ideas. Men who think you surviving made you dangerous." Bumpy smiled faintly. "I was dangerous before today." "Yes," Sal said. "But today you embarrassed them." Outside, a car backfired. Both men ignored it. "They want to fix it," Sal continued. "Quiet. No more daylight. No witnesses." Bumpy stood. The room seemed to shrink around him. "Tell them something else." Sal swallowed. "What?" "There will be no fixing," Bumpy said. "There will be understanding." He stepped closer, close enough that Sal could smell iron and starch, blood and restraint. "Harlem isn't a place you take," Bumpy said softly. "It's a place you ask." Sal nodded slowly. "And if they don't listen?" Bumpy's eyes were steady. "Then they'll learn what daylight didn't teach them." Sal left without another word. By morning, the city shifted. The faction dissolved overnight. Men reassigned. Men silenced. Men suddenly cautious. A sit-down was arranged. Terms were spoken. Boundaries were redrawn in pencil and ink instead of blood. No one mentioned the failed hit directly. Nobody had to. Weeks later, a kid on Lenox Avenue told the story the way legends always start, not with bullets, but with stillness. How Bumpy Johnson stood in the open sun while men fired at him. How he walked forward instead of back. How he didn't flinch. Years would pass. Names would change. Power would move hands. But the shape of that morning stayed the same. Daylight. Witnesses. A man who refused to bow. And whenever someone talked about killing Bumpy Johnson, someone else would shake their head and say quietly, with respect, "You can try, but make sure it's dark."